Hello everyone, my name is Igor Zhogov and this is my presentation of the final project for the CIS 9467 class. For this assignment, I decided to build an investment calculator which allows to input the amount you would like to invest, choose instruments, strategy, time period, and then it will calculate when the money should be invested, how much, and what are the investment outcomes. All this can be done by doing the VBA-enabled solver. But let me start with showing what these can actually do. The first tab is the terminal, where we choose all the settings for the calculator. Let's enter the amount we would like to invest at this time. Let's just say we have a nice $2.5 million bonus check that we got for Christmas. And let's put this money here. Then we can choose the instruments that we'd like to use. By default, it will include all 5, which are common stocks, real estate, precious metals, Bitcoin, and currency. If you don't like any of this, you can just click the checkbox and it will automatically exclude this instrument from calculation. For example, let's check metals. Let's just say one of my coworkers said that this is the very bad option to invest and people should avoid it by any cost, so I don't want it to be included. For the strategy, I have created a separate tab called strategy, which shows the percentage breakdown for each instrument. The first table here, just showing what portion should be spent on a certain instrument. For example, if we pick the conservative strategy, there will be nothing spent on a Bitcoin, and since it's relatively new, hasn't really proved itself, and people don't know what to expect from it. On the real estate, however, there will be 45% spent, as it's been one of the most stable and safest investment types. On the other hand, if we look at the aggressive strategy, we see the Bitcoin will take 45% of the investment and the real estate is only 10%. As the Bitcoin has been showing amazing results in the recent couple of years, and real estate has been growing but very slowly. The second table here is just a dollar representation of the percentages. Since we entered $2.5 million on the first page, this will show us how much will go into each section and populate it automatically. Now let's go back to the terminal page and finish setting it up. For the strategy, let's go with the moderate option. You can see the risks are shown over here, as if we know the higher the risks, the greater the reward is. Next, let's decide the time period. For this example, I'll pick a 2-year period, which means that all we're investing today and the forecast made by the solver will be met around May 2019. Now let's go ahead and click on the Create Portfolio button here. As there are a lot of constraints, this might be taking usually a little bit more time, but as we can see, it wasn't that bad at all. Let's click OK. And here we are at the next tab, which is called Portfolio. This is the main page and the reason why this project was created in the first place. As you can see, we have a generated file that shows each instrument available, how much we should invest, what will be the projected gains, and the final amount of the investment over the time period selected, which for this case is 2 years. As you can see, from the stock options, we only have 2 companies we should invest, but the major one is Tesla Motors, which is not surprising considering how well the company did over the past couple of years. Next section is the metals, and since we decided not to include it, these fields will just be blank. Next part is currencies. As you can see, there are also a couple options, but the best one is Norwegian krone, with almost 1/5 of the entire budget to be invested in this currency here. Next part is Bitcoin, which also accounts for 1/5 of the entire investment portfolio. The reason for that is that because we chose the strategy to be the moderate, this allocates only 25% to be invested in each instrument, which is the reason why these both are here, are almost $500,000, but just not quite yet. Next is the real estate. As we can see, the only option we should consider at this moment is lot number 5, which we'll go over in little details a little bit later on. Finally, we have results of the whole operation, with the total amount that was invested, expected gains, the final value, which demonstrated an overall growth of 60%, which is an amazing result for the 2-year investment. Now we have talked about what this project can do. Now let's go into the details of how this entire thing works. Let's go to the next tab, which is stocks. Here we have the historic values from 2013 up to 2017 for the 10 best performing companies in the NASDAQ index. To estimate the future value, I've picked the forecast formula. As we can see here, we have forecasted values for 2018, 19, and 20, and which can be used for the solver to determine where the money will be put. The last 3 columns are just showing what's the difference in value from one year to the other. For example, this year, this one is 2018 to 2017, and the last one is 2020 to 2017. Next tab is metals. As we can see here, the forecasted results are not positive at all, and since our colleagues were right to suggest us not to invest money here, as we can see. Currency is the next tab. Here are the top 10 currencies according to the New York Times Magazine, and as we can see, the Norwegian krone is expected to grow the most, and is exactly the reason why Solver used this currency out of all of them. Next is a Bitcoin, and as we can see here, this is the main reason why our calculator is showing 60% growth, because as you can see, the Bitcoin used to be priced at $13 just 4 years ago, comparing to now it's almost face value is almost $1,000. However, our forecast does show that the growth will slow down a little bit this year, and then it will pick up the pace in 2019 and 2020. Next tab is the capital. This table here, the first one, shows the prices for square feet over the last year and the estimate growth. The second table here is actually the real listings from Zillow that are on sale at the moment, and is projected value growth. In order to determine the future value for this, I have to use a special formula which determines the price per square feet for this property, then adds the estimated increase of 6, 12, or 18, depends on the year we choose, and then it multiplies it back by a total square feet amount, and finally it deducts the initial investment amount. This will allow the solver to use the property for the cost, for the cap, but not for the value gains calculation, where these will be used. Now we're moving on to the, so to speak, a bonnet of this project. The first tab here is called Strategy Settings. This tab is needed for the VBA to specify the settings for the solver. For example, we can see strategy selected row, which is controlled by the user. Depending on what is chosen on the terminal page, VBA code will insert the corresponding percentage values into this row, which will become a constraint for the solver. The second table here just represents the formula that dynamically calculates the cap for each section depending on the value that is being entered in the terminal page, and is also used as a constraint for the solver. Now let's take a look at the final page of the project, which is where a solver operates. We can see the first table, which is just the time period settings for the linear regression forecast. By changing these values, we can change the forecast to be for 6 years or 3 months, depending on what period we would like. Next table is where the solver calculates everything. We have 3 rows of formulas for each of the year. We have a column that shows the quantity that was bought, and the calculation column, which is represented in the portfolio report that we saw earlier. Depending on the year we choose, the VBA will plug in the formulas from either of this column and use it in the solver calculation. As you can see, since we picked 2-year span, these formulas from here are actually now in the solver calculation. This cell over here represents the constraint, the pool from dollar amount available to be invested that is entered in the terminal by a user. And this cell over here is what solver is maximizing and shows us the total gains over the period selected. Last table over here is being pulled from the constraints section that we just saw in strategy settings. This is based on amount that we entered and the strategy we selected. This will allocate the maximum amount of funds that can be used, which as we see here, this is exactly what was spent on the Bitcoin, Krone, and Tesla Motor Company. The last piece that I would like to go over in this presentation is this little clear button, which basically what it does is that if you did exclude one of these instruments earlier, but now you would like to put it back, you just have to click clear, and now the metal is back in. So if we go into create a portfolio again, it will actually include the metals there as well. This concludes my presentation, and thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.